Wow. Kenya's streets once stained with the blood of colonial resistance, now with puns and hashtags and the vans of Gen Z. The death of Albert Ojwang at a 1-year-old blocker beaten to death in police custody in June 2025 has reignited a fire that many thought had flickered, and after the 2024 finance bill protest, Ojwang's murder confirmed by a post-mortem revealing torture, not the police absurd suicide claim, has become the latest totem for a youth-led movement that fancies itself the hubbing of Kenya's political salvation. But let us strip away the romanticism and peer into the habits. This Gen Z uprising, for all its tech-savvy bravado, is not the revolution Kenya needs. It's a mirage, a seductive illusion of change that risks birthing either a new digital elite or a chaotic void, both of which could entrench the very establishment it seeks to dismantle. The Gen Z movement prides itself on being leaderless, tribeless, and partyless, a digital warm swarm that transcends Kenya's ethnic and political fault lines. Social media platforms like X, TikTok, and Instagram have been the battleground, where AI-generated protest songs, finance bill, LGBT, chatbots, and walls of shame naming pro-bill MPs have amplified the cause. Now, this decentralized approach, hailed as a democratic triumph, is precisely its Achilles heel. Without a coherent leadership or ideology, the movement is a hydra with too many heads, each shouting a different slogan. Reject finance bill, Ruto must go, good governance. Everyone comes on with their own ideas. So Ojwang's death has galvanized this hydra, with the protests erupting in Nairobi, Homa Bay, and Rift Valley, demanding justice and the resignation of Police Chief Eliud Langat. We just stepped aside, but we're still demanding him to resign. But what comes next? The movement's refusal to align with traditional political structures, while Nopo leaves its vulnerable to fragmentation. History whispers warnings. The Arab Springs, you remember, was leaderless. The uprisings, once celebrated, descended into authoritarianism or civil war when the euphoria faded. So Kenya's Gen Z, armed with smartphones and righteous anger, risks a similar fate, not because of slate repression alone, but because their idealism lacks the ruthless pragmatism needed to seize an old power. Consider the 2024 protest. Fleeting victory, President William Ruto withdrew the financial bill, then fired the cabinet and promised austerity, yet within months he co-opted Raila Odinga's ODM allies into a broad-based government, which we call a bread-based government. Then, the Gen Z movement, despite storming parliament, failed to translate street power into structural change. Ojwang's death may rekindle the flames, but without a unified strategy, the protests risks becoming performative rituals, cathartic but impotent against Kenya's entrenched political machine. We know the system. So here's the diabolical twist. When Gen Z movement, as far from dismantling the establishment, could birth a new digital elite cloaked in revolutionary rhetoric, the movement's strength lies in its tech-savvy middle-class core. Urban youth would navigate AI tools and global hashtags with ease, but this demographic, educated, connected, and often English-speaking already wields disappropriations in cultural capital. Their protests, while claiming to speak for all Kenyans, often exclude the rural poor, the informal sector workers, and the unconnected masses who bear the brunt of economic hardships but lack X accounts and the TikToks and the Twitters. So the movement's digital infrastructure, crowdsourced MP phone numbers, AI-driven activism, and online shaming hints at a future where power shifts not to the people but to those who control the algorithms. Imagine a Kenya where Gen Z leaders, lionized as heroes, become the new gatekeepers. Imagine that. Wielding data and influence to dictate political narratives. This isn't liberation. It's a rebrand of elitism, where the old tribal barons are replaced by influencers and coders. Ojwang, a former teacher turned blogger, embodied this shift, a voice amplified by X, only to be silenced by the state. His death exposes the paradox: digital power amplifies dissent, but also marks its wildest as targets, creating martyrs without successors. So this digital elite aligned with global neoliberal forces, the same IMF and the World Bank that generated critique for Kenya's debt trap. Already the movement demands better education, jobs, healthcare, here go the language of Western-funded NGOs, risking co-optation of foreign interest. A genocide-led movement, should it ever emerge, might trade one master for another. You know, politics, swapping Ruto's cronyism for Silicon Valley soft power. The establishment would not collapse, it would simply upgrade its operating system. The chaos alternative, a power vacuum beckons. If not a digital elite, then what? The alternative is darker, a power vacuum that invites chaos. Kenya's political establishment, Ruto, Odinga, and their ilk, thrives on elite pacts. That's why Raila is silent, is watching, is in the midst of it, but is watching. He will speak after this demonstration. This is Tuesday. You will speak, you will hear him. Kenya's political establishment, Ruto and Odinga, and their ilk thrives on elite pacts. We know that. The handshake that establishes power at the cost of reforms. Genocide rejection of these pacts, while principles establish this delicate balance. That's why Ruto and Raila hate this Gen Z movement. They didn't even believe a demonstration would ever happen without Raila's involvement. That's why they are really mad and they are killing. So if we remember, Ojwang's killing, coupled with over 20 custodial deaths in 4 months, it signals a state willing to crush dissent preemptively. Yet if the movement escalates, storming State House or paralyzing Nairobi, it could fracture Kenya's fragile institutions. The 2007-2008 post-election violence, which killed over 1,200 and displaced 350,000 Kenyans, looms a cautionary tale. Genocide protests through non-ethnic so far risks being exploited by opportunistic politicians, stoking tribal divisions. Without a clear successor to Ruto or a viable opposition, Odinga's co-optation was neutralized as a mere. A power vacuum could invite military intervention or regional war. The scene in Somalia collapsed. The movement's demand for Ruto must go is visceral, part silent on who or what replaces him. In fighting a free all, where the strongest know the just prevail, Ojwang's death has already sparked protests chanting no justice, no budget. But those are sparks, not a blaze. The state's response, arresting one officer while 2 remain at large, shows a calculated mix of concession and defiance. If genocide pushes harder, the Kenya Defense Forces, already deployed unconstitutionally in 2024, could return, turning streets into battlegrounds. The movement's refusal to negotiate with the establishment, while pure risks escalating into a cycle of violence that benefits neither youth nor the nation. So Kenya's political stage, a house of cards, often lauded as East Africa's democratic beacon, is a house of cards built on compromise and cohesion. The 2010 Constitution promised devolution and accountability, but its implementation has been sabotaged by elite greed. Ruto's 2022 victory, pitched as a hustler uprising, has mocked into a regime accused of police brutality and economic betrayal. Ojwang's death following 60 protest deaths in 2024 exposes this fragility, a state that kills its critics while promising reform. So genocide movement challenges this stature, but misunderstands its resilience. Kenya establishment has survived wars, Mau Mau's rebellion, Moi's authoritarianism, and 2007's near civil war. Each time it adapted, co-opting dissenters or outlasting them. Ruto's promises of police reform and transparency post Ojwang are textbook revelation, buying time until the protest fizzle. The movement's digital prowess, while impressive, cannot match the establishment's analog power, control of security forces, patronage networks, and international allies. Moreover, Kenya's regional role complicates change. As a Western ally supporting Morocco's Western Sahara plan and hosting US military bases, Kenya enjoys geopolitical protection, the likes of US. A Gen-Z-led upheaval, if it threatens the status quo, could invite external intervention, subtle or overt. The movement's global hashtags may win sympathy, but not sovereignty, leaving Kenya vulnerable to foreign agendas. The diabolical truth is revolution beckoning, then. So the Gen Z movement, sparked by economic despair and fueled by Ojwang's martyrdom, is a double-edged sword. It promises to topple Kenya's corrupt establishment, but risks replacing it with digital elite or plunging the nation into chaos. These leaderless ethos, while potent, exclude the offline majority. The establishment, blooded but unbold, watches from the shadows, ready to co-opt or crash. Here's the diabolical truth. Kenya doesn't need a revolution. It needs a reckoning, Gen Z anger, which is justified, but the vision is myopic. True change requires bridging the digital-rural divide, forging alliances with older generations, and crafting a post-truth plan, but doesn't invite anarchy. Ojwang's death could be a catalyst, not a fetish, a reminder that martyrs alone don't build Kenya's long list of squandered rebellions, leaving the establishment to laugh last. The movement must decide, will it be a mirage fading under the sun of state repression or a monsoon reshaping Kenya's political landscape? For now, the House of Cards stands. The establishment bets on the former.